Let's get ready for a deep dive
Oh,
into something we use every single day
okay.
without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Phrasal verbs.
Okay.
You know those combos of
Ooh,
verbs
yeah.
and prepositions or
Yeah.
adverbs
Right.
that create a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
It's like a secret code of,
Yeah.
of the English language.
It's fascinating how
Yeah.
they can
Yeah,
add a more informal,
right.
a colorful layer to our speech.
Mm-hmm.
We could just say start,
Right.
but instead we set about a
Yeah.
task.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we mess about instead of just playing.
Right.
It's these little things
Yeah.
that make language so interesting.
Totally.
Wouldn't you say?
For sure.
Yeah.
And today we're going to explore a list
Okay.
of common phrasal verbs.
All right.
And with your help,
Yeah.
I'm hoping to uncover those hidden depths
Okay.
and maybe even learn a thing or two along the way.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's unpack this first batch.
Yeah.
Set about, go about, and bring about. They all revolve around action,
Right.
but they feel subtly different.
You're picking up on those nuances already.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes phrasal verbs so cool.
yeah.
Set about implies a deliberate
Okay.
and purposeful start.
Right.
Like, she set about cleaning the house after the party. It's about intentionality.
Right.
That sense of like taking charge, rolling up your sleeves.
Yeah.
It's not just starting,
Yeah.
it's deciding to start
Yeah.
and making it happen.
Exactly.
Go about is more about the method.
Okay.
The how-to.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
he didn't know how to go about solving the issue.
Right.
It's about strategy,
Okay.
figuring out the best approach.
So set about is the launch,
Yeah,
go about is the roadmap.
exact.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about bring about?
Bring about
Yeah.
is all about consequence. You know, it's not just that you do something, it's that your actions cause something else to happen.
Oh.
Think of historical turning points what
Right.
brought about the fall of the Roman Empire.
Whoa.
There's a phrasal verb
Yeah.
with some weight.
I never thought of it that way.
Right.
It's not just about the action.
It's about the ripple effect,
Yeah.
the change that follows.
Okay, so we've covered action and intention.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about communication.
Okay.
We've got talk about, ask about, and hear about.
All right.
And they all involve sharing information,
Yeah.
but in different ways.
Exactly. So talk about suggests a focused discussion, a real back and forth. It's
Yeah.
not just chatting.
Right.
It's delving into a topic.
Yeah.
Ask about, on the other hand,
Okay.
is very direct. It's
Right.
seeking specific information. Like,
Right.
the reason I called was to ask about the plans for Saturday. Straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
Yeah.
And hear about
Yeah.
implies learning something indirectly, maybe through the grapevine.
Exactly.
It's secondhand information, not from the source.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's like hearing a rumor
Right.
or catching wind of something.
Uh-huh.
Not always reliable,
Right.
but it certainly sparks curiosity.
Speaking of curiosity,
Yeah.
let's shift gears
All right.
and consider verbs of thought. Think about and worry about.
All right.
They seem straightforward, but are they hiding any surprises?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Even seemingly simple phrasal verbs can reveal a lot about our internal processes.
Well,
Think about implies a deliberate act
okay.
of consideration or reflection.
Uh-huh.
It's taking the time to ponder something.
Right. Weighing your options,
Exactly.
mulling it over in your mind.
But worry about takes it a step further.
Okay.
It emphasizes a sense of concern or anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not just thinking.
Right.
It's feeling that knot in your stomach.
Uh-huh.
The unease that comes with uncertainty.
I've definitely felt that one before.
No.
It's amazing how these simple verbs can capture such complex emotions.
That's the power of language,
Yeah.
and we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
Okay, bring on the next batch.
Right.
We've got a bunch of verbs
Okay.
that feel more playful
Mm-hmm.
and full of movement, mess about, fool about,
Yeah.
run about, and rush about.
Right.
They all have that sense of
Yeah.
being on the go,
Uh-huh.
but with different vibes.
You're so right.
Yeah.
Mess about and fool about
Uh-huh.
both suggest a carefree, lighthearted attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Mess about has that hint of mischief.
Yeah.
Like you're playing around and maybe pushing boundaries a little.
I could see that.
Fool about feels even more lighthearted.
Okay.
Like you're just letting loose,
Yeah.
not taking things too seriously.
Yeah.
Then you have runabout,
Yeah.
which suggests energy and freedom.
Right.
That example from our list. My dog loves to run about on the beach for hours.
Yeah.
Pure joy, uninhibited movement.
I can practically feel the wind in my hair.
Right.
And then there's rush about,
Yes.
which has a completely different energy.
Right. It's all about hurried movement, often driven by stress or urgency.
Oh, yeah.
Think about rushing about
Yeah.
to get ready for work in the morning.
I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah.
But you know what's really catching my eye?
What's that?
This whole along phenomenon.
The long phenomenon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We've got go along, come along, tag along, play along.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of them.
You've hit on something interesting.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about these verbs
Yeah.
is that along
Mm-hmm.
often adds a sense of accompaniment,
Okay.
progression, or continuation.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's highlighting the journey itself.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the action.
Right.
It's about the path you're taking.
Exactly.
The experience of moving through something.
Think about the phrase. We'll figure it out as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
The along suggests a gradual process
Right.
of understanding as we move forward.
Yeah.
It's about taking it step by step,
Yeah.
experiencing the ups and downs along the way.
That makes so much sense.
Right.
It's like
yeah.
along is adding a layer
Mhm.
of time and experience to the verb,
Yeah.
creating a more nuanced meaning.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
And we've got a whole bunch more along verbs to unpack.
Okay.
Each with its own
Okay.
unique flavor.
Bring it on. I'm ready for more.
Okay.
And I have a feeling we're just getting started with these phrasal verbs.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
There's so much more to explore. So we've seen how along can add this sense of journey and progression to a verb, but it also pops up in situations where you're bringing someone or something with you, like bring along.
Oh yeah, bring along is so practical. Like, don't forget to bring along a jacket. It gets chilly at night. It's about making sure you have what you need for the ride.
Exactly. It's about being prepared, having those essentials by your side. But then you have get along, which shifts the focus to relationships.
Ah yes, get along. That's a big one. It's about navigating those social dynamics, finding that harmony with someone. Like, do you and your sister get along? It's a question we've all heard, right?
Right. It's about compatibility, finding that common ground. But then come along throws a bit of a surprise into the mix. It's not just about movement, it's about arrival, often unexpected.
You mean like a taxi should come along any minute now? That hopeful anticipation of something appearing on the horizon.
Exactly. It's that sense of possibility, of something new entering the scene.
So come along is all about arrival. But sometimes you got to keep things moving, right? That's where move along comes in.
Move along can be quite direct. It often implies a sense of progression, like you said, but sometimes it's a not so subtle hint to leave to make space. Imagine a police officer telling a crowd to move along. There's a bit of authority there.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe.
Yeah.
And then you have tag along, which is all about following someone. Sometimes invited, sometimes not.
Tag along. We all have that friend, right? The one who's always like, can I tag along? Sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's not so much.
Totally. It can be fun to have company, but sometimes you need your space. It's all about finding that balance. And then there's play along, which takes things in a more strategic direction.
Play along is fascinating because it implies pretending to agree with something, even if you don't really feel that way. It's about adapting to a situation, maybe for your own benefit.
Like in that scenario where she felt she had to play along or risk losing her job, sometimes playing along is a survival tactic.
Exactly. It's about reading the room, understanding the unspoken rules of the game. But then you have be along, which is all about reassurance.
Oh, be along. It's like saying, don't worry, they're on their way. It's about trust, knowing that someone will show up.
Exactly. It's a promise of arrival, a comforting presence on the horizon.
So we've got reassurance with be along. But what about when you need to make some space literally? That's where shove along comes in, right?
Yes, shove along. It's not exactly polite, but sometimes it's necessary. Picture a crowded bus, everyone squeezed in tight. You might hear someone say, could you shove along a bit so I can sit down?
Definitely not the most graceful request, but I can see how it would come in handy in a pinch. And speaking of being in close quarters, sing along takes a completely different approach.
Sing along is all about joining in, creating something beautiful together. It's that feeling of everyone at a concert starting to sing along with the band. It's about connection, shared energy.
There's something magical about that, right? It's
Yeah.
like everyone's on the same wavelength, united by the music.
It's a powerful feeling. And then you have pass along, which is all about keeping things moving, but in terms of information or objects.
Like when you're playing a game of telephone and someone says, pass along the message. It's about communication, ensuring that information reaches its destination.
Exactly. It's about sharing, spreading the word, keeping that chain of connection alive.
And with pass along, we've covered a whole bunch of those along verbs. But I'm starting to see how they're not just about movement. They're about so much more connection, anticipation strategy. It's like along is adding a whole new dimension to these actions.
You're absolutely right. It's about understanding the nuances, the subtle ways that these little words can change the meaning of an entire phrase. And guess what? We've got even more phrasal verbs to explore, some that are even more idiomatic and colorful.
Bring it on. I'm hooked. All right, we're back for the final stretch of our phrasal verb adventure. And I'm ready for more of those idiomatic expressions you mentioned. You know, the ones where the meaning goes beyond the individual words.
You bet. We've got some good ones lined up. But first, let's touch on a couple more along verbs, just to round out the picture.
Okay, bring them on. I'm curious to see what other nuances along can bring to the table.
Well, how about follow along? It's a bit like tag along, but it implies more of a mental process.
Right.
It's about keeping track of something as it progresses, like following directions or trying to understand a complex explanation.
I can relate to that. I'm always the one in the group who needs things explained twice. It's that feeling of trying to keep up to make sure you don't miss a beat.
Exactly. It's about active listening, engaging with the information as it unfolds. And then you have walk along, which takes us back to a more literal sense of movement.
Walk along is so simple, yet so evocative.
It conjures up images of leisurely strolls, enjoying the scenery, taking in the fresh air. Like a walk along the beach, the ultimate relaxation activity.
Absolutely. It's about slowing down, appreciating the journey, and taking in the simple pleasures of life.
Okay, so we've covered follow along and walk along. Now, what about those idiomatic phrasal verbs you promised? I'm ready for some linguistic fireworks.
All right, you asked for it. How about coast along? It's one of those phrases that paints such a vivid picture in your mind.
Coast along. I'm picturing someone riding a bike downhill, no effort required. Just enjoying the ride. Does that fit? You're getting warm. It implies making progress without much effort, kind of like gliding through life. Like Laura, who could coast along at school without too much effort because she was so naturally gifted.
Wow, so coast along can actually be a good thing.
Yeah.
I always thought it had a negative connotation, like you weren't really trying.
That's a common misconception. Sometimes coasting along is exactly what you need, especially when you've earned it. It's about enjoying the fruits of your labor, taking a breather before the next uphill climb.
I like that. It's about recognizing when it's okay to relax, to trust that things will keep moving in the right direction.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between effort and ease. And now for the grand finale, the idiom you've been waiting for, a tough nut to crack.
Oh, I love this one. It's so descriptive. It's like trying to open one of those walnuts that requires a special tool, or figuring out a really complicated puzzle.
Perfect analogy. It's about facing a challenge, something that requires effort and persistence to overcome. It could be a difficult problem, a stubborn person, or even a complex idea that takes time to unravel.
It's about not giving up, about finding the right approach, and eventually cracking that nut wide open.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And you know what? I think we've cracked the code of phrasal verbs today.
I think you're right. We've gone from simple actions to complex idioms, from literal meanings to metaphorical interpretations. It's amazing how these seemingly small word combinations can add so much depth and richness to our language.
And the best part is there are countless more phrasal verbs out there waiting to be discovered. They're like hidden treasures sprinkled throughout our everyday conversations.
So as you go about your day, I encourage you to pay attention to the phrasal verbs you hear and use. See if you can spot the subtle nuances, the hidden meanings, the connections to other ideas.
And don't be afraid to play around with them, to experiment with different combinations and see what new meanings you can create. After all, language is a living, breathing thing. It's meant to be explored and enjoyed.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of phrasal verbs. It's been a pleasure, and I've definitely learned a thing or two along the way.